Many people regard the film Scarface to be a certified classic movie, to be one of the best, if not the greatest movie of all time. And it's fair to think that, and everyone's got their own opinion. I consider The Last Crusade to be my favourite film, but let's not get off topic. Al Pacino, who plays Tony Montana in Scarface, went to the producer of the film, Martin Bregman, with the original idea of making a movie about a former convict named Carlito Brigante. He rejected this request, but still thought it was a good idea, so he instead took it up with writer David Kirk, who ended up writing the script alongside the Scarface director Brian De Palma. And as a result of this, they ended up coming together to make the film Carlito's Way, based off the two novels Carlito's Way and After Hours. Now just to clear something up, this isn't really a remake of Scarface, but it's sort of considered to be one by many people, as the films could be quite similar, but because this is my video, I'm just going to call it one. Scarface is about a young Cuban crook by the name of Tony Montana who has one sole purpose in life: get to the top. At the start of the story, he's stuck in a refugee camp and ends up leaving after assassinating this fat government official for a drug lord. Him and his friend Manny work as dishwashers for a small stand, but Tony leaves out of anger and ends up accepting a deal to buy cocaine, but it ends up going completely wrong, and this initiates a shootout, which leads to Tony believing he got set up. So Tony ends up going with this guy to meet this cunt, and he ends up getting hung on a helicopter for being an informant. Tony ends up setting up his own operation, and shortly after avoids a deadly encounter, which he figures out is a setup by the drug lord. Before he kills him, takes his girl, and he takes his business. A bit later, he's being accused for tax evasion, so his ally, Sosa, offers to keep him out of prison using connections if he kills this activist who's exposing him. While about to commit the hit, he sees his family with him and calls it off, which makes this guy here, Hector Salamanca here, angry. He wants to carry it out, and just like in Breaking Bad, he ends up dying while pressing a button. Now Sosa is furious that the information about him got out, and during this, Tony tracks down his sister and finds that his best friend has slept with her, which ultimately prompts him to be shot, only for his sister to reveal that they just got married. And this makes Tony dive into his pool of cocaine, while Sosa's men invade, and after this iconic scene, say hello to my little friend! He's shot in the back, and ultimately ends up dying, as the movie ends with the words on screen saying, "The world is yours." Moving on to Carlito's Way, we start the movie out with some narration, but aside from that, we actually start out looking at this bearded, beautiful man named Carlito Brigante, who is a former criminal, and he used to be at the top. Now we see him a new man, someone who wouldn't even consider going back to the bad things he does. Well, that's until after he gets released, he gets brought along with his young cousin, Guajiro, on a deal, and Carlito's reluctant, but Guajiro assures him that it's just for reputation. And there's one thing I like about Carlito's Way, is it gives subtle hints before something breaks out. Like, you see these guys looking at him, and there's lots of scenes like this throughout the movie that have great tension, but Carlito knows shit is gonna go down, so he pretends to teach them pool techniques until this guy comes out the toilet from taking a shit, and everything goes blazing. His cousin gets killed, these guys get killed, a shootout, a Mexican standoff, all of that. But everyone ends up dying, apart from Carlito, who ends up taking the money from the botched deal, and buys a part of a nightclub where he meets Benny Blanco. No, not him, Benny Blanco, played by the guy from John Wick, who thinks of Carlito as his future self. But Carlito just thinks he's a street punk. Things turn south when Carlito has a girl at his table with his lawyer, who got him out, who Benny particularly likes, so he requests her, but they just go back and forth. Carlito says no, Benny sends wine, Carlito sends it back. So Benny ends up confronting him, where Carlito just honestly insults him, which causes him to grab his girl, where the lawyer, who also likes her, pulls a gun. So the fight is broken up, and after this is cleared out, Carlito confronts him in just such a cool way.
Okay, Benny Blanco, from the Bronx. Now if I ever see you here again, you die. Just like that.
Then he kicks him down the stairs and decides to let him live. Carlito shortly rekindles with his former girlfriend, while his lawyer, Dave, is accused by this Tony Soprano oh shit, his name's actually Tony. But he's accused of stealing $1 million, so he's forced to break him out of prison on the boat, which he asks Carlito to ride along, just to, make sure it works out. After rescuing him with one of Tony's sons, instead of pulling him up to the boat, he just brutally whacks him across the head and ends up killing his son. So now Carlito is forced to help him dump his body, and he falls out with Dave, where he returns and gets interrogated by the FBI, who reveal that Dave had indeed betrayed them by feeding them false information that he was selling cocaine. Dave gets stabbed multiple times by these mob hitmen, and that ends him up in the hospital. Carlito visits him and tells him to basically just leave him alone. And after that, one of the previous hitmen comes in, and Dave tries to James Bond shoot him as he points first, but he finds out Carlito emptied the gun, so he ends up meeting his inevitable fate. Carlito buys a ticket to leave with his girlfriend, and he returns to his nightclub where he sees his former friends when he was a criminal. The movie starts to get tense again because one thing is quite obvious: they're here to kill him. But while the tensions are high, Carlito makes an excuse to leave them, where he escapes with his secret hole, and now the chase is on. In a highly intense tailing scene, Carlito gets away and manages to kill all the men chasing him. When he's finally able to leave with his girl waiting there for him, he gets shot by none other than
Benny Blanco from the Bronx?
and now we find him where he was in the beginning of the movie, bleeding out with narration. And that brings us to the end of the movie. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why have I spent this long talking about these two movies? Well, yeah, fair. I mean, you read the title, yeah. But I'm just going to compare some of the similarities and differences that I think makes these two a remake. At the start of the movie, we see Carlito high in power before he's released, and in Scarface, on the other hand, we see how Tony has absolutely no power. Progressing through the movie, we get something that reinstates them both in a position of power. Tony killing a guy to escape the camp and going through with the cocaine deal, and Carlito finding himself in a shootout, which gives him money to own the club. We also see them dealing with someone of a higher power, Tony with Omar and Carlito with Benny, until they dig themselves a deeper hole by taking action on those people of high power, Tony killing Frank and Carlito letting Benny go. They both get jobs at the end of the movie, which ultimately seals their fate. Tony with the job to kill the activist, which he doesn't carry out, and Carlito trying to save the mob boss, which ends up going wrong. You also see how Tony killed Manny for getting with his sister, and Carlito basically killed Dave by emptying his gun. And due to this, they end up getting surrounded and killed by someone who they both sort of betray. One thing I also want to highlight is Tony does his best at killing anyone who crosses him, while Carlito does the exact opposite, trying to avoid his life of crime and only killing when it's needed. Overall, I personally think Carlito's Way is a better film because of the characters, the story, the regrets, the betrayal, and just it's more of like a personal story. And while I do think Scarface definitely carries some of these themes, but I just consider it to be like a monotonous story. Get to the top, no matter what. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, but if not, then let me know what I should upload next down below in the comments.